I was still in my scrubs when the text landed like a slap. We planned the reunion at your beach house. 47 people, 4 days. Stock the fridge by Friday. I typed a single word. No. My sister replied instantly. We're coming anyway. What are you gonna do? Call the HOA. I didn't call the HOA. I called someone else. By sunset. They learned what happens when you treat my child like a side character in his own home. My name is Dr. Brooklyn Foster. I am 39 years old, and for the last 12 hours, my hands had been inside a human chest cavity, repairing a mitral valve that had decided to give up on a 60-year-old grandfather. The air at Harborline Heart and Lung Center always smelled the same, a sterile mix of rubbing alcohol, floor wax, and the metallic tang of recirculated air. It was a scent that usually gave me a sense of control. Inside the operating theater, I was God, or at least his very busy subcontractor. I controlled the blood flow. I controlled the rhythm. I controlled the outcome, but the moment I stepped out of the automatic sliding doors and into the humid evening air of the parking lot, that control evaporated. I drove home in silence. My mind was a blur of stats and post-op orders. My body a heavy object I was merely transporting from point A to point B. When I pulled into the driveway of our suburban colonial, the lights were on in the living room, warm, golden, safe. I unlocked the front door and dropped my bag on the entryway bench. The house smelled like garlic and roasting chicken. Jordan. My husband was the kind of man who believed that a difficult day could be solved, or at least mitigated, by a proper roast chicken. I walked into the living room, still in my navy blue scrubs, on the oversized gray sectional. My son, Eli, was curled into a ball. He was 11 years old, though he still had the soft cheeks of a younger child. He was wearing his noise-canceling headphones, his eyes locked on the screen of his Nintendo Switch. He didn't look up immediately. He was deep in a world where the rules were clear and he could restart if he made a mistake. I watched him for a second. Eli was Jordan's son from a previous marriage, but I had legally adopted him when he was 5. 2 years after his biological mother decided that parenting interfered too much with her lifestyle. He was my son, in every way that mattered, in every way that the law recognized, and in every chamber of the heart I repaired for a living. He was mine. Hey, buddy, I said softly, touching his shoulder. He jumped slightly, then slid one side of the headphones off. A grin broke across his face. Hey, Mom, you're late. Valve repair, I said, leaning down to kiss the top of his head. It was messy. Cool, he whispered, his eyes drifting back to the game. Jordan walked in from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He was wearing his glasses, which meant he had been grading papers. He taught high school history and had more patience in his little finger than I had in my entire body. Rough one, he asked, scanning my face. Standard, I lied. I was exhausted down to my marrow. I just need 5 minutes, then I'm human again. I walked to the kitchen island to pour a glass of water. That was when my phone, resting face up on the granite counter where I had left it charging that morning, buzzed. It was a long, aggressive vibration, the kind that demanded attention. I glanced at the screen. The name at the top read, Bryn. My stomach tightened. My sister Bryn did not text to ask how my day was. She did not text to share funny memes. Bryn texted when she needed something, or when she had already decided something that required my wallet. I picked up the phone. The message was a wall of blue text. We planned the reunion at your beach house. 47 people, 4 days. Stock the fridge by Friday. I stared at the words. I blinked, sure that I was misreading them due to fatigue. I read it again. We planned the reunion at your beach house. Not, can we use the house? Not, is the house available? Stock the fridge by Friday. Like I was the staff. Like I was a concierge service at a resort I didn't even own. The sheer entitlement hit me like a physical blow to the chest. It was breathtaking. 47 people, my parents, Bryn and her husband, my brother Drew, and knowing them, a battalion of church friends and vague acquaintances they wanted to impress with their rich daughter's property. I looked up at the wall calendar hanging by the fridge. Today was Tuesday. Friday was 3 days away. I traced the dates with my eyes. This coming weekend was blocked out in red marker. Off. It was the first full weekend I had off in 3 months. I had fought for these shifts. I had traded 2 holidays to get this weekend clear. We were supposed to go to the beach house, just me, Jordan, and Eli. We were going to order pizza, build Legos on the floor, and sleep until 10 in the morning. I looked back at the phone. The audacity of it made my fingers tremble. I didn't think. I didn't calculate. I didn't try to soften the blow like I usually did. I didn't type out a polite excuse about plumbing issues or previous bookings. I typed one word. No. I hit send. I watched the screen. My heart was hammering against my ribs, faster than a patient in atrial fibrillation. Almost immediately, the 3 little dots appeared. The typing bubble. It pulsed. It vanished. It pulsed again. It was a visual representation of Bryn's rage loading. The reply pinged, "We're coming anyway." And then, a second later, a follow-up text that felt like a slap across the face. "What are you gonna do? Call the HOA." I stared at the screen until the backlight dimmed and turned black. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. Call the HOA. It was a taunt. She knew I hated conflict. She knew I prized my privacy. She knew that calling the homeowners association on my own family would be embarrassing, public, and messy. She was banking on my shame. She was betting on the fact that Dr. Brooklyn Foster, the successful surgeon who always fixed everything, would just roll over and pay the bill to avoid a scene. She was betting on the Brooklyn of 10 years ago. Brooklyn. Jordan's voice made me jump. He was standing in the doorway, the dish towel still in his hand. He had that look on his face, the one that said he knew the atmosphere in the room had shifted from exhaustion to something sharper, more dangerous. "Everything okay?" he asked. I placed the phone face down on the counter. I pressed my palm against the cool case, as if physically trapping the toxicity inside the device. "Family stuff," I said. My voice cracked. It was a phrase I had used 1,000 times. It was the catch-all euphemism for the chaos that radiated from Pine Hollow. Pine Hollow was the landlocked, dusty town where I grew up, and where my family still lived. To them, I wasn't a surgeon who worked 80-hour weeks and dealt with life-and-death trauma. To them, I was the one who got out. I was the golden goose. I was the ATM that breathed. They didn't see my mortgage. They didn't see the student loans I had just finished paying off 2 years ago. They didn't see the insurance premiums or the taxes. They just saw the doctor before my name and assumed my pockets were bottomless. Bryn, Jordan asked. He didn't need to be a detective to guess. "Yeah," I said. I forced a smile. But it felt brittle, like dried plaster. "Just Bryn being Bryn, wants to use the beach house." And I said no. Jordan raised an eyebrow. He knew how rare that was. Usually. I bargained. I compromised. I let them take a mile because I was afraid to guard the inch. "Good," he said, moving to the stove to check the chicken. "We need this weekend. Eli needs this weekend." At the mention of Eli's name, my gaze drifted back to the living room. From the kitchen island, I could see the back of the sofa. Eli had shifted. He was no longer playing the game. He was just holding the console, staring at a blank spot on the wall. His shoulders were hunched up toward his ears. He had heard the vibration of the phone. He had heard the shift in my tone. Eli was a child who had learned early on that his presence was tolerated by my family, not celebrated. He was a master at reading room temperature when my parents or siblings were around. Eli had a heartbreaking habit of physically shrinking. He would sit in corners. He would speak in a whisper. He would try to occupy as little space as possible, as if he were afraid that taking up too much air would remind them he was there. I remembered the last time we had a family gathering. It was Christmas, 2 years ago. My mother had handed out gifts, expensive, thoughtful, personalized gifts for Bryn's children, the real grandchildren. For Eli, she had handed him a generic gift card to a fast food restaurant chain that didn't even have a location near our house. "He's hard to buy for," she had said, waving a hand dismissively. "I never know what those kids like. Those kids." And then there was the comment from Uncle Jerry. a cousin on my father's side, who had looked at Eli during dinner and muttered, loud enough for the table to hear, "Well, blood tells, doesn't it?" Nobody had corrected him. I had frozen. I had sat there, clutching my fork, paralyzed by the sudden, heavy silence. I had let it slide because I didn't want to ruin Christmas. I didn't want to be the difficult daughter who thought she was better than everyone else. I looked at Eli now. He was making himself small on his own sofa, in his own home, just because he sensed the ghost of their presence through a text message. He looked back at me. His eyes were wide, dark, and filled with a resignation that no 11-year-old boy should ever possess. It was a look that said, I know I'm a side character. I know I don't matter as much as them. It's okay. I'll stay out of the way. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It wasn't the sound of a bone breaking or a valve rupturing. It was the quiet, metallic click of a lock sliding into place. I looked down at my hand. It was steady now. The trembling had stopped. My sister thought she was dealing with her little sister. She thought she was dealing with the Brooklyn who sought their approval. The Brooklyn who paid for the new roof on our parents' house because it's the right thing to do. The Brooklyn who apologized for her success. She thought she could bully me with a text message and a thread about the homeowners association. We're coming anyway. I picked up my phone again. I didn't unlock it. I just held it, feeling the weight of it. I wasn't going to call the HOA. That was amateur hour. That was petty. Calling the HOA was a complaint. What I was about to do was not a complaint. It was an eviction of their entitlement. I looked at Jordan. It's handled, I said. My voice was different. It was lower. It was the voice I used in the operating room when things went wrong, and I had to take absolute command of the situation. Jordan stopped stirring the sauce. He turned and looked at me properly. He saw the set of my jaw. He saw the cold, hard light in my eyes that usually only appeared when I held a scalpel. Brooklyn, he asked, softly. I'm not calling the HOA, I said, repeating the words Bryn had mocked me with. I looked back at Eli. He had put his headphones back on, retreating into his safe world. Stock the fridge, she had said. Oh, I would stock something. All right. I walked past Jordan, towards the home office where we kept the files on the beach property. I'm calling someone else, I whispered to the empty hallway. For 39 years, I had been the daughter, the sister, the provider, the doormat. By sunset on Friday, my entire family was going to learn exactly what happens when you treat my child like a side character in the narrative of his own life. I wasn't just a doctor anymore. I was the surgeon, and it was time to cut the rot out, to understand why a simple text message about a reunion felt like a declaration of war. You have to understand the geography of my family. I do not mean the physical distance between my home near the coast and the dusty, landlocked streets of Pine Hollow. I mean the financial and emotional landscape that I had spent 2 decades traversing, usually with my checkbook in hand. I was the first one to leave. I packed my life into a beat-up sedan the morning after high school graduation and drove away as if the town limits were on fire. I worked double shifts. I took out loans that felt heavy enough to crush a lung, and I studied until my vision blurred. When I finally emerged as Dr. Brooklyn Foster, surgeon, I made the classic mistake of the survivor. I looked back, and when I looked back, I felt guilty. That guilt became a currency. For the last 15 years, I have been the quiet infrastructure of my parents' lives. It started small, a heating bill here, a grocery run there. But as my salary grew, so did their needs. It was never a demand. It was always a crisis. A leaking roof that would surely mold if not fixed immediately. A transmission that blew on the way to church. I paid off their credit card debt 3 separate times, totaling over $28,000. I paid the property taxes on the house I did not live in. I sent a monthly transfer that I told myself was an allowance, but in reality was a subscription fee for their affection. It was not just my parents. My brother Drew, 5 years younger and perpetually between opportunities, drove a truck that I had co-signed for. When he missed payments, which was often, the bank did not call him. They called me. I paid it to save my own credit score, and Drew would just shrug and say He would get me back when his big break came. That break had been coming for a decade. Then there was Bryn, my older sister, the one who had stayed, the one who had given them the grandchildren they wanted, the one who held court at Sunday dinners I was too busy to attend. When her first husband left her with a mountain of debt and a foreclosure notice, I wrote a check for $15,000. I called it a loan. We both knew it was a gift. It stopped the bankruptcy, but it did not buy me respect. It only bought me the expectation that I would do it again. But nothing illustrated my position in the family quite like the beach house. I bought the property in Cape Seraph 5 years ago. It was my finish line. After years of residency, fellowship, and 80-hour weeks, it was the one tangible thing I did just for me. It is not a mansion. It is a weathered gray shingle house with 3 bedrooms, a bunk room for kids, and a wraparound porch that looks directly out onto the Atlantic. To me, it was a sanctuary. To my family, it was a lottery win they felt they had partially ticketed. I remember the first time I invited them. I had spent weeks furnishing it, choosing soft linens and sea glass colors, trying to create a space that felt peaceful. My parents walked up the front steps, their shoes loud on the wood. My mother stopped at the railing, looked out at the ocean, and sighed. She did not turn to me and say, "Congratulations, Brooklyn, you worked hard for this." She spread her arms wide, encompassed the view, and said, "This is ours." Not yours, ours. From that moment on, the deed might have had my name on it, but the psychological ownership had been transferred. They stopped asking to visit. They started announcing their arrivals. They called it the family place, a term that sounded warm to outsiders but felt like theft to me. They would drive down for long weekends when I was on call. They gave the door code to neighbors, to friends from church, to people I had never met. I would drive down on a rare Friday off, hoping for silence, only to find the driveway full of cars and the fridge full of cheap beer. And the condition they left it in was a constant, low-grade insult. I would find wet towels rotting on my hardwood floors. I would find sand ground into the white duvet covers. I would find the grill encrusted with the charred remains of burgers from 3 days prior. One summer, Drew broke a custom glass lamp in the living room. He didn't tell me. He just shoved the shards under the sofa and left. I found it when I stepped on a piece of glass that had migrated to the rug. When I confronted him, he laughed and said I could afford 10 more. There was never an apology. There was never an offer to pay for a cleaning crew. If I complained, I was being difficult. I was being stingy. I was hoarding my blessings, a phrase my mother loved to weaponize. But I could have lived with the mess. I could have lived with the financial leeching. I could have handled being the family bank if that was the only price of admission. What I could not handle, what slowly began to rot the cavity of my chest, was how they treated Eli. It was not the kind of abuse you see in movies. They did not beat him. They did not starve him. They did not lock him in cupboards. It was something far more insidious. It was a cold, polite erasure. Eli came to me when he was 5, a quiet, watchful boy, with eyes that had seen too much instability. Jordan and I had fought hard to make him feel secure, to make him know he was the center of our world. But to my family, he was always an asterisk. They had a way of drawing a circle that included everyone but him. It happened in the small things. Christmas mornings where Bryn's 3 children opened mountain ranges of toys video games, branded sneakers, bikes. Then my mother would hand Eli a single, flat envelope. Inside would be a $20 gift card to a store he didn't like, or a pair of socks. She would smile her sweet church lady smile and say she just didn't know what boys like him were into these days. It happened with the family photos. God, the photos. Every gathering, my mother would insist on a group picture. She would arrange Bryn, Drew, their spouses, and the real grandchildren in a tight, laughing cluster. Then she would look at Eli, who would be hovering on the edge, hopeful and uncertain. "Eli, honey," she would say, her voice dripping with false sugar. "Would you mind taking the picture for us? You are so good with phones." And my son would take the phone. He would smile that small, heartbreaking smile of his, and he would snap the photo of the family that did not include him. If Jordan or I tried to push him into the frame, the dynamic shifted, the smiles became stiff, bodies turned slightly away from him. He became a foreign object in their perfect tableau. They introduced him differently, too. Bryn's kids were my nephew or my grandson. Eli was always introduced as Brooklyn's husband's son or the kid from Jordan's first marriage. They built a verbal wall around his legitimacy every time they spoke his name. I remember a barbecue at the beach house last July. It was hot, the kind of heat that makes the air shimmer. We were all on the deck. Eli was sitting at the patio table, trying to show Bryn's youngest son, Caleb, a card trick he had learned. Caleb was laughing, engaged. For a moment, they were just two boys playing. Then my Uncle Jerry, a man who had never contributed a dime to the family but had plenty of opinions, walked by with a beer in his hand. He looked at the two boys. He looked at Caleb's fair hair, and then at Eli's dark, intense eyes. "Funny how that works," Jerry said, loud enough to cut through the conversation. "You can put a cat in the oven, but that don't make it a biscuit, not a real cousin. Is he—" The silence that followed was absolute. 40 people on that deck, my parents, my siblings, people who claimed to love me. Not one of them spoke. Nobody said, "That is unkind." Nobody said. "Eli is family." Bryn took a sip of her wine. My mother brushed a piece of lint off her skirt. Drew looked at the ocean. In that silence, I failed my son. I should have flipped the table. I should have screamed. I should have thrown Jerry off the deck, but the conditioning of a lifetime is a heavy chain. I froze. My brain frantically began to rationalize, the way it always did. "Don't make a scene. Jerry is drunk. It is just words. If I yell, I am the crazy one. If I yell, I ruin the weekend." I watched Eli. He didn't cry. He didn't run. He just slowly put the deck of cards back in its box. He slid off the chair. He walked past me, his face a perfect, smooth mask, and went into the house. I found him later in the bunk room. He was reading a comic book. I sat on the edge of the bed, my heart twisting in my chest. I tried to explain. I tried to say that Uncle Jerry was an idiot, that families are complicated, that he was loved. Eli had looked up at me. He was 10 years old then. He looked 20. "It's okay, Mom," he had said quietly. "It is not okay," I insisted, tears stinging my eyes. He shrugged, turning a page of his comic. "It really is. Side characters are usually safer. The main characters always get hurt or die. Being a side character means you make it to the credits." The air left my lungs. He had accepted it. He had built a survival strategy around the fact that my family treated him like a prop in their background. He found safety in being invisible because being seen by them meant being hurt. That sentence had lodged in my throat like a fishbone for a year. I felt it every time I swallowed. I felt it every time I wrote a check for my parents. I felt it every time Bryn made a passive-aggressive comment. So when that text message arrived on Tuesday night, demanding my house, demanding my food, and excluding my son by the very nature of their reunion, the bone finally dislodged. I looked at the history of what I had given and what they had taken. I looked at the debit column and the credit column, and for the first time in my life, I realized the account was overdrawn. They wanted a reunion. They wanted the beach house. They wanted the amenities of the life I had built without ever respecting the people who lived inside it. They thought they were dealing with the daughter who paid the bills to keep the peace. They did not realize that the peace had already been broken. Not by a text message, but by a 10-year-old boy who thought it was safer to be invisible in his own family. I was done paying. It was time to start collecting. The silence in the house after I sent that text message was heavy, but it was not empty. It was the kind of silence that precedes a storm, the drop in barometric pressure before the windows blow out. I sat at the kitchen island, my phone face down, staring at the grain of the granite. Jordan had gone to check on Eli, leaving me alone with the humming of the refrigerator and the sick feeling in my stomach. I knew my family. I knew that no was not a complete sentence to them. It was merely a negotiating position, an opening bid in a game I was expected to lose. My phone vibrated, not a text this time, a Facebook notification. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to leave it there, to go upstairs, take a shower, and wash the day off. But the surgeon in me knew that you cannot treat a wound you refuse to look at. I flipped the phone over. The screen was bright in the dim kitchen. Bryn Kincaid invited you to an event, Family Beach Bash. I tapped the notification. The app opened, and the air left my lungs as if I had been punched. There, at the top of the screen, was a photo of my house. It was a picture I had posted on Instagram 3 years ago, a golden hour shot of the wraparound porch with the ocean glittering in the background. I had captioned it, Sanctuary. Bryn had taken that photo, stripped the context, and slapped a new title on it in a cheerful, bubbly font, Family Beach Bash 2025. Underneath the title, the location tag read, Brooklyn's Beach House, Our Family Place. I felt a vein throb in my temple. Our family place. She had codified the theft in a digital tag. She had tagged me as the host, a public declaration that this was sanctioned, that I was on board, that I was the one welcoming them. I scrolled down to the guest list, going 47 people. I clicked on the list. I saw my parents. I saw Drew. I saw Bryn and her husband. But then the list spiraled into absurdity. There were names I barely recognized. There was Stan from the dealership. There were 5 couples from my parents' church choir. There were 3 of Bryn's coworkers. There were people listed as +1s and children whom I had never met in my life. 47 people in a house with a septic system designed for 8. 47 people in a house with 3 bathrooms. I scrolled to the discussion tab. It was already active. People were commenting, excited, planning potlucks, asking about parking. It was a runaway train, and Bryn was the conductor shoveling coal into the engine. There was a pinned post from Bryn at the top. Housing assignments. I read it, my thumb hovering over the glass. She had created a spreadsheet, the master bedroom, my bedroom, with my personal things, my books. My clothes was assigned to Mom and Dad. The second bedroom was for her and her husband. The third bedroom was for the pastors. The bunk room was listed as the cousin pile. And then I saw the comment thread underneath the post. A woman named Sheila, someone I think went to high school with Bryn, had commented, Hey, this looks tight. Where is everyone else sleeping? And what about Brooklyn's boy? Doesn't he need a bed? My heart hammered against my ribs. I waited for the defense. I waited for someone to say, It's his house. He gets a room. Bryn's reply was posted 40 minutes ago. Don't worry about Eli. He is super sensitive to noise and crowds. It is better if he stays with Jordan's ex for the weekend. We want everyone to be comfortable. I stared at the words. Jordan's ex, they knew exactly what that meant. Jordan's ex-wife was a woman who had signed away her parental rights to move to California with a fitness instructor. She hadn't seen Eli in 6 years. She wasn't an option. She wasn't even a contact in our phones. To suggest sending him to her was not just a logistical impossibility, it was a knife twist. It was saying, send him back to the woman who didn't want him, because we don't want him either. Sheila had replied, Oh, I thought he lived with them full time. Isn't he usually there? And then, the reply that made the world stop turning. Bryn wrote, He does. But this is a family reunion. Overnights are for the real cousins. The kids want to bond without having to walk on eggshells. Real cousins. It was in black and white. It wasn't a drunken mumble at a barbecue. It wasn't a whispered aside. It was typed out, posted, and public. And right underneath Bryn's comment was a small, red heart reaction. I clicked on it. Mom! My mother had hearted the comment. She had looked at the sentence declaring my son was not a real part of this family, and she had pressed the button that meant, I love this. My hand started to shake. It wasn't a tremble. It was a violent tremor. I took a screenshot. The flash of the screen capture felt like a camera shutter at a crime scene. I took another and another. I captured the event page, the guest list, the housing assignment that gave my bed to my parents, and the thread that erased my son. Brooklyn, Jordan was back. He walked into the kitchen, saw my face, and stopped dead. He didn't ask if I was okay. He knew I wasn't. He walked around the island and looked at the phone still glowing in my hand. He read the screen. I watched his eyes scan the text. I saw the moment he hit the words, "real cousins." Jordan was a man of infinite patience. He dealt with teenagers for a living. He was the calm water to my fire. But in that moment, his face did not just darken. It turned to stone. His jaw set so hard I could see the muscle feathering beneath the skin. "They didn't," he whispered, his voice dangerously low. "They did," I said. My voice sounded hollow, like it was coming from a tin can. "She hearted it," Jordan said, pointing to the little red icon. "Your mother hearted it." "I know." He looked up at me, and his eyes were fierce. "They are not stepping foot in that house. Brooklyn, I don't care if we have to burn it down." "No," I said. I stood up. The shaking had stopped, replaced by a cold, clinical clarity. "We aren't burning anything down. That's my house." I picked up the phone. I didn't call Bryn. Bryn was the symptom. I called the disease. I dialed my mother. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright and chirpy, the background noise of a television game show humming behind her. "Brooklyn, I was just telling your dad you'd call. Did you see the Facebook page? Isn't it wonderful Bryn has done such a good job organizing everyone?" "Mom," I said. I didn't return the greeting. "I need you to listen to me very carefully. The reunion is not happening at my house." There was a pause, a beat of silence where the cheerfulness faltered, then reset. "Oh, stop it," she laughed, a dismissive, airy sound. "You're always so dramatic. It's already planned. People have taken off work. Brooklyn, Cousin Sarah is driving in from Ohio." "I don't care about Cousin Sarah," I said. "I cared about the comment Bryn made, the one you liked, the one about Eli not being a real cousin." "Oh, for heaven's sake," she sighed, the tone shifting from cheerful to annoyed. "You are reading way too much into that. Bryn was just joking. You know her sense of humor. She just meant that the kids who grew up together have a different bond. Don't be so sensitive." "Sensitive?" I gripped the edge of the counter. "She suggested sending him to his biological mother, the woman who abandoned him, and you hearted it. Well, maybe if you didn't force the issue all the time, it wouldn't be awkward," she snapped. "Eli is different. He's a sweet boy, but he doesn't fit in with the rough and tumble of the other cousins. We're just trying to make sure everyone has a good time, including him. He'd be miserable with 40 people. 47, I corrected. There are 47 people on that list. Mom, half of them are strangers." "They aren't strangers. They are church family," she said, her voice rising in moral indignation. "And frankly, Brooklyn, I am disappointed in you. You have been so blessed. You have that big, beautiful house sitting empty half the time. It's sinful to be so selfish." "Selfish?" "Yes, selfish. You have more than you need. You always have. We scrimped and saved to get you where you are, and now you want to slam the door in the face of your own flesh and blood. Stop hoarding your blessings. Brooklyn, it's ugly." Hoarding your blessings. It was the ultimate trump card, in her world. My hard work, my sleepless nights in residency, my student loans, all of it was just a blessing that belonged to the collective. And by protecting it, I was committing a spiritual crime. I tried to pivot. I tried to use the language of the world I lived in, the world of rules and consequences. "Mom, listen to reason," I said, keeping my voice steady. "The house is insured for a single-family dwelling. The septic tank cannot handle 47 people for 4 days. The HOA rules strictly forbid events of this size. If you do this, I could lose my insurance. I could be fined thousands of dollars." "Blah, blah, blah," she interrupted. "You and your rules. You're always so strict. You act like a policeman instead of a daughter. Nobody's going to check the septic tank. Brooklyn, nobody's going to count the cars. You worry too much. It's going to be fine. We'll be there Friday afternoon. Mom, I have to go. My show is coming back on. Will We'll see you Friday. And try to be in a better mood. Okay. For the family." She hung up. I stood there with the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the dead air. She hadn't heard a word, not one. To her, my no was just noise. My valid legal concerns were just me being strict. My pain over Eli was just me being sensitive. They were coming. They were going to drive their cars onto my lawn. They were going to sleep in my bed. They were going to push my son out of the frame, physically and metaphorically. And they were going to feel righteous while doing it. I lowered the phone and looked at the screen again. The screenshot of the comment was still there. Overnights are for the real cousins. I looked at Jordan. He was watching me, waiting. "They aren't listening," I said. "I gathered that," he said. I looked down at the image of the heart reaction. For years, I had thought that if I just explained myself better, if I was just generous enough, if I just achieved enough, they would finally respect me. I thought I could buy their love with compliance. I thought I could negotiate their kindness towards Eli. But you cannot negotiate with people who think they own you. You cannot reason with people who think your boundaries are an insult to their rights. I didn't need to convince them. I didn't need to make them understand the septic capacity or the insurance liability or the moral bankruptcy of their bigotry. I swiped the screenshot away and opened my contacts list. "I'm not going to argue with them anymore," I told Jordan. "So what are we doing?" he asked. "We aren't doing anything," I said. "I am going to do what I should have done 5 years ago." I pulled up the number for the property management company in Cape Seraph. It was late, but they had an emergency line. "I need to lock the door," I said. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of them. I was just done. Friday morning arrived with the crisp, relentless efficiency of a scalpel cutting through skin. There is a specific kind of calm that descends on me when I enter the operating theater. The panic fades. The noise of the world recedes, and all that remains is the procedure. I know the steps. I know the anatomy. I know the tools. That was exactly how I felt when I woke up at 5 o'clock that morning. I was no longer the hurt sister or the disappointed daughter. I was the surgeon, and my family was the obstruction that needed to be removed. I sat at my desk with a steaming mug of black coffee and my laptop open. The screen glowed in the pre-dawn darkness. First, the gate. I called the property management office the moment they opened at 8 o'clock. The community where my beach house sat, Seraph's Landing, was a gated development. Usually, the gate was just a formality, a keypad, where you punched in a code that half the town probably knew. "Good morning, this is Sarah," the receptionist chirped. "Sarah, this is Dr. Foster at 42 Ocean View," I said. My voice was clipped, professional. "I need to reset the access protocols for my property immediately." "Oh, sure. Dr. Foster, did you forget your code?" "No. I need to revoke all existing guest passes, every single one, the code my mother uses, the code I gave my brother, the temporary vendor codes. Wipe them all." "Okay, done," she said, the clicking of her keyboard audible. "Do you want to set up new ones?" "No. I want to hire a dedicated security detail for the gate for the next 4 days." Sarah paused. "Dedicated security. We have the roving patrol. But I want a guard stationed at the gate specifically for my visitors. I am willing to pay the hourly rate. And I am sending you an approved guest list. If a name is not on this list, they do not get through the gate. No exceptions. Not if they cry. Not if they claim to be my mother. Not if they say they have perishable food in the car." "Okay," Sarah said, sounding a little breathless. "I can arrange that with the security firm. Who is on the list?" 3 names, I said. Brooklyn Foster, Jordan Foster, Eli Foster. "That is it. That is it." I hung up and transferred the funds for the security deposit. It was expensive $600 for the weekend coverage, but it was cheaper than the therapy I would need if I let them in. Next, the house itself. I opened the app for the smart locks installed on the front and back doors of the beach house. I scrolled through the user history. I saw entries from 2 weeks ago, my brother Drew's code. He hadn't even told me he was there. I saw an entry from a repairman code I didn't recognize. Used 3 months ago. I deleted every user. I created a new master code. I set up a geofence alert so that if anyone tried to punch in an old code, my phone would ping immediately. Then, the money. I logged into the credit card account I had authorized my mother to use for emergencies. I had given it to her 3 years ago when her water heater exploded, and I had never taken it back. I clicked on pending transactions. My eyes widened. Costco wholesale, $840. Walmart, Supercenter $312. Fireworks Barn, $450. Fireworks. They had bought $450 worth of explosives to set off in a wooden beach community with strict noise ordinances. The audacity was staggering. They were funding their invasion of my property with my own money. They were buying the steaks they would cook on my grill, the beer they would spill on my rugs, and the fireworks they would use to annoy my neighbors, all on my dime. I clicked Report Lost or Stolen. The website asked, "Do you want to freeze this card immediately?" I clicked yes. The card was now a useless piece of plastic when they tried to pay for their next round of supplies, or perhaps the gas to get home. The terminal would decline. It was a petty move, perhaps, but buying fireworks when you don't have a mortgage is petty. Blocking it is just fiscal responsibility. Next, surveillance. I called the security company that monitored the house. "I need to upgrade my package," I told the technician. "I have blind spots on the side of the house and the back patio. I want cameras there, and I want the motion sensors on the perimeter activated." "We can have a guy out there by noon today," he said. "But the perimeter sensors are sensitive. A stray cat can set them off." "That is fine," I said. "I want to know if a leaf blows across the driveway." I wanted a record. If they tried to break a window, if they tried to climb the fence, if they tried to force the door, I wanted it in high definition. Then, a thought occurred to me. A surgeon's instinct to check for complications. I called my insurance agent. "Hey, Bob," I said. "Hypothetically, if I have a single-family policy and there are 47 people staying in the house and someone gets hurt, say, a deck railing collapses, am I covered?" There was a long silence on the other end. 47, Bob asked. "In a 3-bedroom? Hypothetically. Brooklyn, if you have 47 people in that house, you are essentially operating a commercial hotel or an event venue. Your residential liability policy has a cap on occupancy. Usually, it is 2 people per bedroom, plus 2. If the deck collapses under 40 people, the claim would be denied instantly. You would be personally liable for every broken bone and medical bill. You could lose the house. You could lose your license." A cold chill went down my spine. It wasn't just annoyance. It wasn't just disrespect. They were putting my entire livelihood at risk. If one of their church friends tripped on the stairs or burned themselves with a firework, I would be the one sued. I would be the one bankrupt. "Thanks, Bob," I said. That is what I thought. That phone call solidified the last lingering crumb of guilt I had. I wasn't just being mean. I was protecting my family's future. Finally, I picked up my phone to send one text. Cousin Renee. She was the only one in the family who didn't make me want to scream. She was quiet, kind, and had always been nice to Eli. She wasn't on the Facebook thread, but I knew she would be invited. "Renee," I typed, "I know about the reunion. It is not happening. I have locked the house. If you are planning to come, please don't drive down. But if you want to visit us, just you, Mark, and the kids, let me know. We would love to see you, but no crowd." I hit send. It was a lifeline. I was severing the limb to save the body, but I was willing to save the healthy tissue. By noon, everything was done. The gate was secured. The codes were changed. The credit card was dead. The cameras were live. The legal liability was mitigated. We packed the car in silence. Jordan loaded the cooler. Eli put his backpack in the back seat. As we pulled out of the driveway, the sun was high and bright. The air was warm. I looked in the rearview mirror. Eli was wearing his headphones, looking out the window, lost in his own world. He didn't know what was coming. He didn't know that for the first time, his mother wasn't going to ask him to hide. He didn't know that I had built a fortress around our weekend. I turned onto the highway, merging into the traffic heading toward the coast. My phone was silent. I had put it on Do Not Disturb. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't anxiety. It wasn't the tightness of stress. It was lighter. I realized what it was. It was the feeling of boundaries. For years, I had thought that saving my family meant fixing their problems, paying their debts, and absorbing their chaos. I thought it meant keeping the peace at the expense of my own. But as I drove toward the ocean, with the man I loved beside me and the boy I adored in the back seat, I realized I had been wrong. Saving my family didn't mean saving my parents from their poor choices or saving my sister from her entitlement. It meant saving us. It meant saving Jordan, Eli, and me from them. I gripped the steering wheel, and for the first time in days, I smiled. Let them come. The gate is locked. The afternoon sun was beginning to dip, casting long, golden shadows across the floorboards of the living room. The house was quiet. It was a rare, beautiful silence, broken only by the rhythmic shushing of the waves against the shore and the occasional click of a controller from the patio where Eli was testing the range of the Wi-Fi. I had set up my command center on the kitchen island. My laptop was closed, but the iPad was propped up, displaying a grid of live feeds from the security cameras I had installed that morning. At 4 o'clock exactly, the first motion sensor tripped. A notification pinged softly on the tablet. Motion detected main gate. I tapped the screen to enlarge the feed. The image was crisp and high definition. A black SUV rolled up to the keypad. I recognized it immediately. It was my parents' car, a vehicle I had helped pay off 3 years ago. Behind them was a silver minivan Brinz, and behind that, shockingly, was a small rental box truck. They had brought a supply truck. I watched as my father's arm extended from the driver's side window of the SUV. He punched a code into the keypad. It was the old code. The code I had deleted 6 hours ago. Nothing happened. The gate remained shut. He punched it again. I could see his head craning out the window, frustration visible even in the grainy video feed. He tried a third time, then he hit the intercom button. My phone buzzed. It was Bryn. I declined the call. It buzzed again immediately. Bryn again. I declined it again. Then, a text message. Code isn't working. Open the gate. I didn't reply. I just watched the screen. In the video, Bryn had gotten out of her minivan. She marched up to the driver's side of my father's car. She was gesturing wildly. She pulled out her own phone and started typing. My phone buzzed again. I let it vibrate against the granite counter. A moment later, the security guard I had hired, a large, calm man named Officer Miller, stepped out of the guard booth. I saw him approach my father's car. He said something. My father pointed at the gate. Bryn stepped in, waving her hand at the complex behind the fence. Then, my phone rang. The caller ID read, Seraph's Landing Security. I picked up. This is Dr. Foster, I said. Dr. Foster, this is Officer Miller at the gate. His voice was deep and professional. I have a convoy of 3 vehicles here. They are claiming to be family. They say they have a reservation and that the keypad is malfunctioning. The keypad is working perfectly. Officer, I said. Do you have the guest list I sent over? I do, ma'am. The list has 3 names, Brooklyn, Jordan, and Eli Foster. None of the individuals here are on that list. Then they do not get in. I have informed them of that. Dr. Foster, they are becoming agitated. The woman claims she owns the property. She says she's going to call the police if I don't open the gate. I almost laughed. Let her call them. It will save me the trouble. Officer, please tell them that they are trespassing. If they do not turn around and leave, I will authorize you to call the sheriff's department. There was a pause on the line. I could hear shouting in the background. It was the shrill, unmistakable pitch of my sister's voice when she was losing control. Ma'am, Officer Miller said, his voice strained. They are insisting on speaking with you. They say there has been a misunderstanding. I am going to put you on speaker. If that is all right, I think they need to hear it from you. Go ahead, I said. There was a fumbling sound, and then the background noise roared to life. I could hear the wind, the engine of the truck idling, and Bryn's voice, loud and distorted. "Brooklyn, are you there? Pick up the damn phone." "I am here. Bryn," I said. My voice was calm. It was the voice I used when a patient was panicking before anesthesia. "I am on the speaker." "What is wrong with you?" she screamed. "The code is broken. We have been sitting here for 10 minutes. We have 47 people coming. The meat is in the rental truck and the ice is melting. Open the gate." "No," the word hung in the air, amplified by the guard's phone. "What do you mean?" "No. I mean no," I said. "I told you on Tuesday. I told you no. You didn't listen. You planned a reunion without asking me. You invited 47 people to a house that sleeps 8. You excluded my son from the overnight list. You do not get to use my house." "Are you kidding me?" Bryn shrieked. "This is our reunion. People took off work. We drove 4 hours. You can't just cancel it because you are in a mood." "I didn't cancel it," I said. "I never agreed to it. You planned a party at a venue you didn't book. That is not a cancellation. That is poor planning on your part." "Brooklyn, this is your father." My dad's voice boomed over the line. It was deep, authoritative, the voice that had governed my childhood. "Stop this nonsense right now. It is embarrassing. The security guard is looking at us like we are criminals. Open the gate. We can talk about whatever is bothering you once we are unpacked." "We are not talking, Dad," I said. "And you are not unpacking." "I am your father," he shouted, losing his composure. "I raised you. I paid for your piano lessons. I co-signed your first car loan. You owe us respect. You think because you became a big-shot doctor, you are better than us. You think you can look down on your family from your ivory tower." "I don't think I am better than you," I said, feeling a cold fire in my chest. "I think I am the owner of the house, and I think that when you tell the world my son is not a real cousin, you lose the right to sleep under my roof." "Oh my God, are you serious?" Bryn cut in. Her voice was dripping with incredulity. "You are doing this over a stupid Facebook comment. That is what this is about. You are ruining the family reunion because of a joke." "It wasn't a joke, Bryn. You were going to send him to a motel. You were going to send him to his abuser." "He doesn't even like the beach," Bryn yelled. "He hates it. He just sits inside and plays video games. We were doing him a favor. Why do you have to be so dramatic about everything? He is fine. He doesn't care." I looked away from the iPad screen, through the sliding glass doors of the kitchen. I could see the deck. Jordan was out there with Eli. They were standing by the corner pillars of the porch. Eli was holding a hammock, a bright orange nylon hammock he had bought with his own allowance money 3 months ago. He had asked me back then if he could bring it to the beach house. At the time, I had hesitated. My mother hated things explicitly attached to the good wood of the porch. She said it looked trashy. She said it chipped the paint. But today, 10 minutes ago, Eli had walked up to me with the bundle in his hands. "Mom," he had asked, his voice small, "can I put this up? If it is okay." I had looked at him. I had looked at the house that was legally, financially, and morally mine. "Yes, buddy," I had said, "you can put it anywhere you want. Use the best view. Now." I watched through the glass. Jordan was lifting Eli up so he could hook the strap around the pillar. Eli was laughing. He swung himself into the orange cocoon, disappearing for a second, then popping his head up, grinning at the ocean. He looked like a king in his own castle. He didn't look like a side character. He looked like a boy who knew he was home. "He likes the beach just fine," I said into the phone. "He just doesn't like you." Silence on the other end. "I am giving you 1 minute," I said. "Officer Miller has strict instructions. If that truck does not turn around, he calls the sheriff, and I have the sheriff's number on speed dial too. Do not test me. Bryn, I have cameras on the gate. I am recording this. Go home. You are going to regret this." My father shouted. "You are tearing this family apart." "The family was already torn," I said. I am just finally putting up a fence. I hung up. I looked back at the iPad. For a long moment, nobody moved. I could see Bryn slamming her hand against the side of the minivan. I could see my mother in the passenger seat of the SUV, her hands covering her face. My brother Drew, who had been sitting in the passenger seat of the truck, had not even gotten out. He knew. Officer Miller stepped forward again, his hand resting casually on his belt. He pointed down the road, away from the gate. My father's SUV did not move for a full 30 seconds. It was a standoff of ego against reality. Then, slowly, the reverse lights flared white. The SUV backed up, turning sharply. The minivan followed, aggressively peeling rubber as Bryn swung it around. The rental truck, lumbering and heavy, made a clumsy three-point turn, its backup beeper echoing faintly through the phone line I had already disconnected. I watched them drive away. I watched the dust settle on the road. I watched until the red taillights disappeared around the curve of the highway. I put the iPad down. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. It was the adrenaline dump. It was the same feeling I had after a 6-hour bypass surgery when the final stitch was thrown and the heart was beating on its own again. My knees felt weak, but my head was incredibly clear. The house was still quiet. The waves were still shushing against the sand. I walked to the sliding glass door and opened it. The salt air hit my face, cool and clean. "Mom!" Eli called out from the hammock. He was swinging gently, one leg dangling over the side. "This spot is awesome. You can see the lighthouse from here." "It is a great spot," I said. My voice was steady. "It is the best spot in the house." Jordan looked at me. He saw the iPad on the counter. He saw the set of my shoulders. He didn't ask what happened. He knew. He just walked over, wrapped his arm around my waist, and kissed my temple. "They gone," he whispered. "Yeah," I said, leaning into him. "They are gone." I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with air that felt, for the first time in 5 years, completely mine. "Hungry?" Jordan asked. "Starving," I said. "Let's order pizza, the kind with the extra cheese that Mom hates." "Done," he said. I looked at Eli swinging in the wind, safe, happy, and loud. The invasion had been repelled, the patient was stable, and I was finally off the clock. The silence that followed the departure of the convoy was not truly silent. It was the heavy, pressurized quiet of a submarine that has just dodged a depth charge. Outside, the ocean breeze was gentle, but inside the house, the airwaves were radioactive. My phone, which I had left face down on the kitchen island, began to vibrate. It wasn't a notification here or there. It was a continuous, angry buzz, as if the device itself were having a seizure. It vibrated so hard, it actually walked itself a few inches across the granite. I didn't want to look. I knew what was there. I knew the cycle of abuse like I knew the cycle of blood through the heart. First the shock, then the guilt, then the rage. I picked it up. The first volley was from my mother. It was a picture, a blurry, low-light photo of a motel room with beige walls and a bedspread that looked like it hadn't been changed since 1995. "We are at a motel off the highway." The text read, "Your father's back is spasming." The truck wouldn't fit in the lot, so Drew has to sleep in the cab to watch the meet. I hope you are happy. You have put your own parents in a place with bedbugs because of your pride. I felt the old reflex, the conditioning of 3 decades, kicking me in the gut. Fix it, send money, book them a hotel, apologize. But then I remembered the rental truck full of fireworks. I remembered the real cousin's comment. I swallowed the guilt and swiped to the next message. It was from my father. "You have forgotten who you are." He wrote, "You think money makes you safe. It doesn't. Family is all you have. When you are old and that husband of yours is tired of your coldness, you will die alone, and we won't be there. You will die alone." It was the nuclear option. He knew my deepest fear, the fear that my professional success had isolated me, that I was fundamentally unlovable. He was weaponizing my own insecurities to punish me for setting a boundary. Then came the public execution. "Brooklyn," Jordan said. He was sitting on the bar stool, his own phone in hand. His face was pale, illuminated by the blue light of the screen. "Do not open Facebook." "She posted," I said. It wasn't a question. "She went nuclear," Jordan replied. "Don't look." I walked around the island and looked over his shoulder. I had to know. In surgery, you have to know the extent of the necrosis before you can debride it. Bryn had posted a photo of herself. She was crying, or at least, she had mastered the art of looking like she had just finished crying. Her mascara was artfully smudged. The background was the parking lot of the motel. The caption was a novella. "I am absolutely heartbroken." It began. We planned this reunion for months. 47 family members, grandparents, babies, friends from church, all left stranded in a parking lot, because my sister decided to lock the gates on us without warning. We have nowhere to go. We have food spoiling. We have disappointed children asking why Aunt Brooklyn doesn't love them. I felt the bile rise in my throat, but she wasn't done. "I know Brooklyn is under a lot of stress at the hospital," she continued, pivoting to the concern angle that gaslighters love. "But ever since she married Jordan, she has changed. She isn't the sister I know. I feel like she is being isolated from us. And to use poor Eli, a troubled child who we have always tried to love despite his behavioral issues, as an excuse. It is sick. We are praying for her. If anyone knows of a rental that can take a large group last minute, please DM me. We are desperate." The comments were already rolling in like a tide of sewage. "OMG, Bryn. That is horrific. How could someone do that to their own parents? Praying for you guys. Narcissism is a disease. Troubled child. That explains a lot. Keep the other kids safe." "She called him a troubled child," Jordan whispered. His voice was trembling with a rage I rarely saw in him. "She called my son a problem to justify her bigotry." He started typing furiously. "What are you doing?" I asked, putting my hand over his screen. "I am commenting," he snapped. "I am going to post the screenshot of the real cousins thread. I am going to tell them about the credit card fraud. I am going to burn her down." "No," I said firmly. "Brooklyn, she is lying about us. She is lying about Eli." "I know," I said. "But if you engage, you give her oxygen. If you post the screenshots now, it becomes a he said she said drama. You look defensive. You look like you are down in the mud with her. That is what she wants. She wants a fight because a fight distracts from the fact that she is sitting in a motel. So we just let them think we are monsters. We let them think whatever they want," I said. "The people who matter, the people who actually know us, won't believe it. The people who believe it, I don't want them in my life anyway." My phone buzzed again. A single text from my brother. "Drew, you could have just told us. Brooke, seriously. I'm sleeping in a truck. Least you could have done is give a heads up." I looked at the message. The sheer lack of self-awareness was breathtaking. I typed back, "I have been telling you for 11 years. I told you no on Tuesday. I told you no when you asked for the car loan I ended up paying. I told you no when you broke my lamp. You just never listened because you didn't think I would actually do anything." I hit send. Then I blocked his number. I blocked my mother. I blocked my father. I blocked Bryn. The silence that followed was real this time. It was the silence of a bridge that had been burned so thoroughly there was no ash left to carry on the wind. "I feel sick," I admitted, leaning against the counter. "It's the adrenaline crash," Jordan said, standing up and rubbing my back. "And the heartbreak. You just divorced your entire family in 2 hours." "I didn't divorce them," I said. "I just stopped paying the alimony." Just then, the intercom at the gate chimed. We both froze. Jordan looked at the door, his muscles tensing. If they came back. I looked at the iPad. It wasn't the SUV. It wasn't the truck. It was a beat-up Honda Odyssey with a dent in the rear bumper. I recognized it immediately. "It's Renee," I said. I pressed the talk button. "Renee." "Hey." Her voice came through the speaker, tinny and hesitant. "I know you said I know the gate is locked, but I saw the Facebook post, and I saw the text you sent me. I have a lasagna. And I have Marky and Sarah. We aren't 47 people. We are just 4. If you want us to go away, we will. Seriously, just say the word. I looked at Jordan. He nodded. Come in, Renee, I said. Code is 1105. 5 minutes later, Renee walked through the front door. She looked exhausted. She was carrying a foil-wrapped tray of lasagna that smelled like garlic and comfort. Her husband, Mark, was behind her, carrying a cooler and looking awkwardly at his shoes. Her 2 kids, Marky, who was 10, and Sarah, who was 8, peeked out from behind her legs. Eli was still on the deck. He hadn't come inside. He was wary. He had learned that family arriving meant Eli leaving. Renee set the lasagna on the island. She looked at me, her eyes wide and sincere. I saw what Bryn posted, she said. She's insane. Brooklyn, she's actually insane. She's hurt, I said automatically, then stopped myself. No, you are right. She is calculating. I brought wine, Renee said, pulling 2 bottles from her tote bag. And I brought the kids. I didn't tell anyone we were coming here. If my mom finds out I am consorting with the enemy, she will probably disown me too. She paused, then looked me dead in the eye. I don't care, she said. I am choosing sides, and I'm choosing the side that doesn't treat kids like garbage. I felt a lump form in my throat, hard and painful. I hadn't cried when my father told me I would die alone. I hadn't cried when Bryn lied to the world, but hearing Renee say she picked me, the difficult one, the strict one, made my eyes burn. Thank you, I whispered. Where is Eli? Marky asked. He was holding a Nintendo Switch case. I brought Mario Kart. I bet I can beat him. He is on the deck, Jordan said. Go easy on him. He is the champion of this house. The kids ran out the sliding glass door. We stood in the kitchen, me, Jordan, Renee, and Mark. The tension began to bleed out of the room, replaced by the normal, chaotic sounds of life, the clinking of wine glasses, the oven timer beeping, and then the sound I needed to hear most. Laughter. It was Eli's laugh, not the polite, quiet chuckle he used when adults told a bad joke. This was a belly laugh, loud and unrestrained. I looked out the window. Eli was out of the hammock. He and Marky were sitting on the deck furniture, heads bent over the game console. Sarah was spinning around in the hammock, shrieking with delight. They weren't pushing him away. They weren't asking him to take the picture. They were playing with him. We moved to the living room with our wine. The sun had set, and the sky was a bruised purple over the ocean. I have to tell you something, Renee said after her second glass. She was sitting on the edge of the sofa, picking at a loose thread on her jeans. And I don't want you to hate me for it. I won't hate you, I said. I saw the thread, she said softly. The real cousin's thread. I saw it when Bryn first posted it on Tuesday. I was going to comment. I was going to say, what the hell is wrong with you people? I had typed it out. Why didn't you? I asked. My mom, Renee admitted. My mom called me. She said Bryn was just stressed and venting, and that if I started a fight in the comments, I would ruin the reunion before it started. She told me to keep the peace, so I deleted it. She looked up at me, her eyes wet. I am sorry. Brooklyn. I let them say that about him, and I didn't stop it. I was a coward. I looked at her. I thought about how easy it is to be silent. I had been silent for years. I had been silent when they made Eli sit at the kids' table long past the age it was appropriate. I had been silent when they forgot his birthday. I understood the pressure of the family dynamic, the crushing weight of keeping the peace. You are here now, I said. It doesn't make it right, she said. No, I agreed. It doesn't. But you are here. You drove past the guilt trip. You ignored the Facebook war. You showed up with lasagna and your kids. That matters. Renee, actions matter more than the comment section. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Well, for the record, Eli is the only cousin my kids actually like. Bryn's kids are intense. Bryn's kids are feral, Jordan corrected. And we all laughed. It was a dark, relieved laughter. We ate dinner on the deck. The wind had died down. We pushed the tables together. There were no assigned seats. There was no kids' table. Eli sat between me and Marky. He ate 3 pieces of lasagna. He talked about his Minecraft server. He didn't shrink. He didn't check the temperature of the room before speaking. For the first time in his life, a family gathering didn't feel like a performance review he was failing. Later that night, after Renee and Mark had taken their kids to the guest room, the room my parents had demanded, the room that was now filled with people who actually appreciated it, I was cleaning up the kitchen. Jordan was loading the dishwasher. "You okay?" he asked. "I think so," I said. "It feels lighter. Is that terrible?" "My parents are in a motel and I feel lighter." "It is not terrible," Jordan said. "It is grief, but it is the good kind of grief, the kind that comes when the suffering stops." Eli walked into the kitchen. He was wearing his pajamas. He had a piece of paper in his hand. "Hey, Mom," he said. "Hey, Bud. You have fun." "Yeah, Marky is actually pretty good at kart, but I smoked him on Rainbow Road." I never doubted it. He held out the paper. "I drew this, for the fridge." I took the paper. It was a marker drawing, done with the bold, confident strokes of a kid who isn't worried about making a mistake. In the background was the blue ocean. In the foreground was the beach house, and on the deck, there were stick figures. There was a tall one with curly hair me, a tall one with glasses Jordan, a woman with long hair Renee, and 3 smaller figures. But what stopped my breath was the composition. Usually, when Eli drew family pictures for school, he drew us in a line, or he drew Jordan and me together, and himself slightly off to the side, maybe holding a balloon or a pet. In this picture, the 3 kid figures were in a huddle in the center of the page, and the figure labeled me was right in the middle, his arms around the other 2. He wasn't on the side. He wasn't an asterisk. He was the anchor. I looked up at him. He was yawning, scratching his head. "Good night, Mom. Good night, Jordan." "Good night, Eli," I said, my voice thick. I waited until he went upstairs. Then I took a magnet, a strong, heavy magnet, and I pinned the drawing to the center of the stainless steel refrigerator door. It covered up the grocery list. It covered up the calendar. It was the only thing that mattered. My phone buzzed one more time from the counter. A number I didn't recognize, probably a flying monkey. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years, sent by my mother to guilt-trip me. I didn't even look at the message. I picked up the phone, walked to the settings, and turned it off completely. The house was safe. My son was safe. And for the first time in 39 years, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I had thrown the shoes out the window. Monday morning hit with a jarring return to normalcy that felt almost suspicious. After the adrenaline spike of the weekend, the locked gate, the confrontation, the digital fallout, and the surprising warmth of the lasagna dinner with Renee, the silence of the house felt heavy. Jordan had gone back to school early for a faculty meeting. Eli was at a coding camp. I was alone with a cup of lukewarm coffee and a stack of mail that had accumulated while I was mentally manning the ramparts. I sorted through it at the kitchen island. Utility bill, junk mail, medical journal, offer for a credit card I didn't need. Then, my hand stopped on a thick, cream-colored envelope. It was heavy. The return address was a law firm I didn't recognize, Carter, Mills, and Associates, based in a town about 40 minutes from Pine Hollow. It wasn't a big city firm. It was a strip mall firm, the kind that handles DUIs, slip and falls, and aggressive divorces. It was addressed to Dr. Khan, Brooklyn Foster. It was marked personal and confidential. A cold prickle of unease started at the base of my neck. I slit the envelope open with a paring knife. Inside was a cover letter and a photocopy of a legal document. I unfolded the cover letter first. The language was stiff, filled with the kind of pseudo-legal jargon that tries to bully the reader into submission. Dear Dr. Foster, we represent Mrs. Linda Foster and Mr. Robert Foster regarding their equitable interest in the property located at 42 Oaks View Drive, Cape Seraph. It has come to our attention that you have denied access to the co-owners of said property. Enclosed, please find a copy of the quitclaim deed executed on January 15th of this year, establishing a 50% ownership stake transferred to your parents in consideration of familial support and prior financial contributions. We would like to schedule a meeting to discuss a usage schedule and the partition of rights moving forward to avoid further litigation. I stopped reading. The words swam before my eyes: equitable interest, co-owners, quitclaim deed. My hands started to tremble, a violent shaking that rattled the paper. I pulled out the second document. It was a photocopy of a quitclaim deed. It looked official. It had the county seal stamped at the top. It described my property perfectly, the lot number, the parcel ID, and at the bottom, there were two signatures. One was my mother's, the other one was mine. I stared at the signature that read, Brooklyn Foster. It was loopy. It had a heavy slant to the right. It looked exactly like my signature did when I was 18 years old, before medical school turned my handwriting into a hurried scrawl. It looked like the signature on my student loan applications, the ones my father had kept copies of in his filing cabinet, but I had not signed this. I had never seen this document in my life. January 15th, I was in the operating room for 12 hours on January 15th. I remembered that day because we lost a patient on the table. I didn't sign a deed. I was chest deep in a thoracic cavity. I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't just a boundary dispute anymore. This wasn't just my family being entitled or rude. This was a crime. I grabbed my phone. My fingers were clumsy as I dialed the number for the title company that handled the closing on the beach house 5 years ago. I knew the owner, a sharp woman named Karen. Secure title. This is Karen. Karen, it is Brooklyn Foster, I said. My voice sounded breathless, like I had just run a sprint. I need you to look something up for me right now. I just got a letter claiming there is a new deed recorded on my house in Cape Seraph. What? Karen's tone shifted instantly from professional to concerned. Hold on. Let me pull up the county recorder's database. Give me 2 seconds. I heard the frantic clicking of a keyboard. The silence stretched out, agonizing and thin. Brooklyn, Karen said slowly. I see a pending filing. It was submitted electronically 3 weeks ago. It is flagged. Flagged why? Because the notary stamp is from a different county than the signatures, and the date of the notary commission expires in 2 days. The clerk's office flagged it for verification. It hasn't been fully recorded yet, which means the title hasn't legally transferred, but it is sitting there in the system. It creates a cloud on the title. Can you send me the details? The notary's name. I am emailing it to you now. Brooklyn, did you sign this? No, I said, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. I absolutely did not sign this. It is a forgery. Okay, Karen said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Listen to me. If this is a forgery, you need a real estate attorney, not a closing agent. You need a litigator. This is fraud. If that document gets fully recorded, they legally own half your house. You wouldn't be able to sell it, refinance it, or even kick them out without a court order. I hung up. I felt like I was going to throw up. I walked to the sink and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't see the sad daughter anymore. I saw a victim of a heist. They hadn't just planned a party. The reunion, the demand to stock the fridge, the comment about our family place. It was all a setup. If they had gotten into the house on Friday, and if the police had been called, they would have produced this document. They would have waved this forged piece of paper at the sheriff and said, "Look, we are owners. This is a civil dispute, not trespassing." The police would have walked away. They would have let them stay. And once they were in, with a deed pending in the county clerk's office, I would have had to evict them. It would have taken months. They would have established residency. They would have locked me out of my own home. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. They weren't coming to visit. They were coming to conquer. My phone rang again. It was the property manager from Seraph's Landing. Dr. Foster. Yes, I said. I just wanted to give you a heads up, the manager said. I had a weird call this morning. A woman named Bryn Kincaid called the office. She wanted to register a large group for the community center for next month, a church retreat. Let me guess, I said, feeling a cold numbness spreading through my limbs. She said she was an owner. She did, the manager said. She actually emailed us a document, a quitclaim deed. She said you and your parents have what did she call it? A ministry partnership for the property. She wanted the owner passes sent to her address in Pine Hollow. What did you tell her? I told her that until the deed is fully recorded and the HOA board approves the transfer of title, you are the sole owner of record. I told her we couldn't issue passes. She got pretty nasty. Said she was going to sue the HOA for discrimination. She is lying, I said. The document is a forgery. Do not give her anything. Do not give her a gate code, a pool pass, or the time of day. Understood, the manager said. I'll flag the account. Do you want me to forward the email she sent? It has the attachment. Yes, I said. Send me everything. I sat down at the table. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture so ugly I could barely look at it. My brother asking for the car loan. My mother's constant guilt trips about money. Bryn's financial trouble 5 years ago. They viewed me as a resource to be harvested. And when I stopped giving voluntarily, they decided to take it by force. The door from the garage opened. Jordan walked in. He looked tired, his tie loosened, carrying a stack of graded essays. He saw me sitting at the table with the papers spread out. He saw the look on my face. He dropped his bag and came over immediately. What is it? He asked. Did they text again? No, I said. I pushed the letter toward him. Read this. Jordan read the letter. Then he picked up the deed. He looked at the signature. This looks like your writing, he said, frowning. But it's weird. It's too neat. It's a tracing, I said, or a copy-paste job, or my mother practiced it for weeks. Jordan, look at the date. January 15th. Jordan looked up, his eyes widening. You were on call. I remember. I brought you dinner at the hospital because you hadn't eaten in 10 hours. Exactly. I didn't sign it. Jordan sat down heavily in the chair opposite me. He rubbed his temples. Okay, he said. Okay, this is bad. But maybe it's a misunderstanding. Maybe they think because they gave you money for college or something. They have a claim. Maybe we can sit down with a mediator if we go to court. Brooklyn, that's it. You can't come back from suing your parents. I looked at my husband. I loved him. I loved his optimism, his belief that people were generally good, that families could be fixed with enough communication and therapy, but he was a teacher. He dealt with teenagers who made mistakes because their frontal lobes weren't fully formed. He didn't deal with malignant narcissists who committed felonies. Jordan, I said. My voice was ice cold. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is fraud. This is grand larceny. They tried to steal an asset worth $700,000. But they are your parents, he pleaded softly. If you file a police report, they could go to jail. Bryn could go to jail. I looked at the forged signature again. I thought about the real cousin's comment. I thought about the rental truck full of fireworks paid for with my credit card. I thought about Eli, who had learned to be invisible to survive them. They didn't care if I went to jail, I said. If that deck had collapsed under 47 people, I would have been criminally liable. If they had established residency and refused to leave, I would have lost the house. They were willing to destroy my life, my career, and my finances just to have a free vacation home. So what are we doing? Jordan asked. The hope for peace was fading from his eyes, replaced by the grim realization of the truth. I'm not calling a mediator, I said. I'm calling a shark. I picked up my phone again. I didn't search for family law. I searched for real estate litigation and fraud. I found a name, Marcus Thorne. The reviews described him as aggressive, unforgiving, and expensive. Perfect. I dialed the number. Thorne Law, how can we help you? My name is Dr. Brooklyn Foster. I said, I need to schedule an emergency consultation. I have a case involving deed forgery, identity theft, and attempted adverse possession by family members. Mr. Thorne is booked until next week, the receptionist said. Tell him I have a 7-figure asset at risk, a documented paper trail, and I am willing to pay his retainer in cash today, I said, and tell him I want to destroy them. There was a brief pause. Can you come in at 3 o'clock? I will be there, I said. I hung up. I looked at Jordan. He was still holding the forged deed. I need you to do something, I said. Anything, he replied. I need you to go into the files, find every check I ever wrote them, find the emails where I agreed to pay off their cards, find the loan documents for Drew's truck. I want a timeline. I want to show that not only do I not owe them money, but they have been bleeding me dry for 15 years. You're going to sue them for everything, Jordan asked. No, I said, standing up and gathering the papers. I am going to build a wall so high and so thick that they will never be able to climb over it again. I tried to do it with love. I tried to do it with boundaries. Now, I am going to do it with the law. I walked to the refrigerator. I looked at Eli's drawing, the 3 stick figures in the center, hugging each other. The caption, me. My mother had tried to steal the house that made that drawing possible. She had tried to steal the one place where my son felt like a main character. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, but I wiped it away angrily. They wanted a reunion, I whispered to the empty kitchen. They are going to get a deposition. Marcus Thorne's office did not smell like mahogany and old books. It smelled like espresso and aggressive air conditioning. He was a man who looked like he slept 3 hours a night and spent the other 21 looking for weaknesses in other people's contracts. He sat across from me at a glass table, the forged quitclaim deed lying between us like a dead animal. The notary, Thorne said, tapping the paper with a gold pen. That is our first loose thread. Look at the stamp. I leaned in. County of Shelby, I read. Shelby County is 3 hours west of here, Thorne said. It is a rural district. And look at the date. January 15th. That was a Tuesday. I was in the OR, I said. We did a double valve replacement. I was scrubbed in from 6 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. Exactly, Thorne said, a shark-like grin spreading across his face. So, unless you teleported to a strip mall in Shelby County during your lunch break, this is physically impossible, but it gets better. My paralegal ran the notary's commission number this morning. He slid a printout across the table. The commission belongs to a woman named Beatrice Miller. She is 74 years old. She operates out of a pack and ship store in Pine Hollow. Pine Hollow, I asked. That is where my parents live. Precisely, but the stamp on the deed says Shelby County. The notary lives in Pine Hollow, which is in interacting range of your family, but the stamp is fraudulent, or more likely, someone bought a fake stamp online or borrowed one from a friend who didn't look too closely at what they were stamping. Either way, it is a felony. Thorne leaned back. But why risk a felony for a house they can just visit? Because they didn't just want to visit, I said. They wanted to leverage it. My phone buzzed. It was an email from Karen at the title company. I opened it and felt the blood drain from my face. Karen found it, I told Thorne. You were right about the money. The email detailed a blocked inquiry. 10 days ago, a mortgage broker had contacted the title company requesting a preliminary title report for a home equity line of credit. The application was for $150,000. They tried to take out a loan, I whispered. They tried to strip the equity out of my house. And they needed the deed to do it. Thorne finished the thought. They forged your signature to get their names on the title so they could sign for the loan. The reunion wasn't a vacation. Dr. Foster, it was a distraction. They needed to be physically in the house to meet an appraiser. That is why they were so desperate to get in on Friday. I felt sick. The stock the fridge command. The 47 people, it was all smoke. They were going to turn my sanctuary into a piggy bank, drain the equity I had built over 5 years, and leave me with the debt. I left Thorne's office with a list of instructions that felt more like a battle plan than legal advice. Step 1 was the credit bureaus. I sat in my car in the parking garage and opened my laptop. I connected to the hotspot and logged into the 3 major credit bureaus. There it was. A hard inquiry from a lender I had never heard of. Dated 2 weeks ago. I clicked the button that said Freeze Credit. It asked for a PIN. I created one. I did it for Equifax. I did it for Experian. I did it for TransUnion. Then I set up a fraud alert. Active duty potential fraud victim. I felt a grim satisfaction as the lock icons appeared on the screen. The financial faucet was turned off. If they tried to buy so much as a pack of gum on credit in my name now, sirens would practically go off. Step 2 was the credit card. I had already frozen the family emergency card, but now I needed to dissect the corpse. I downloaded the transaction history for the last 6 months and exported it to a spreadsheet. I started categorizing the reunion supplies. My mother had claimed they bought food, and yes, there were charges at Costco. But when I expanded the transaction details, a feature available on the bank's portal, the itemized list told a different story. Costco $400 for groceries, $440 for 2 4K flat-screen televisions, Walmart $300. Not for paper plates or napkins. The SKUs matched a set of high-end camping gear and a portable generator, Fireworks Barn, $450. Then I saw a charge I had missed earlier because it was listed under a generic holding company name. Party Perfect Rentals, $1,200. I called the number on the statement. Party Perfect. This is Dave. Hi, Dave. I am calling about a charge on my card ending in 4588 for a rental in Cape Seraph. Oh, right? The Kincaid wedding. I froze. Excuse me? The what? The Kincaid wedding renewal. Dave said. Mrs. Kincaid called us. Said they were doing a big vow renewal on the beach. We have the 60-foot tent, the dance floor, and the tables reserved. Delivery was supposed to be Friday. But your gate guard turned my driver away. We kept the deposit. Obviously. I hung up. Bryn wasn't just having a reunion. She was throwing herself a second wedding, a vow renewal. She was going to host a wedding reception on my lawn, using my electricity, eating my food, and she was charging the rental of the dance floor to my credit card, and she was going to let my son sleep at a motel while she played bride in my backyard. I drove home in a haze of cold fury. When I walked into the house, Jordan was sitting at the dining table with Renee. They had files spread out between them. Renee looked pale. She had a glass of water in front of her that she was gripping with both hands. You found something, I said, dropping my keys on the counter. Renee did, Jordan said. Renee looked up at me. I didn't know about the money. Brooklyn, I swear, I knew they were mooching, but I didn't know about the fraud. I know you didn't, I said, sitting down. What did you find? I remembered something Bryn said at Christmas. Renee said. We were in the kitchen, and she was complaining about how you wouldn't let her host her church group at the beach house last year. She was really mad. She said, Brooklyn thinks she's the gatekeeper, but she forgets that paperwork is public record. And then Drew laughed and said, Yeah, well, possession is 9/10 of the law. Once we are in, we are in. I thought they were just talking big. But then Bryn said, I found a loophole. A notary friend of Mom's owes us a favor. By summer, Brooklyn won't be able to say no because she won't be the only one with a vote. She planned this for 6 months, I said. She premeditated the forgery. It gets worse, Jordan said. He slid a piece of paper across the table. It was an email printout. The property manager sent this over, Jordan said. It's the email Bryn sent to the HOA to try and get the gate codes. I looked at the header. From Dr. Brooklyn Foster, ownership gmail.com. It wasn't my email. It was a spoof. She had created a fake email address that looked official enough to fool a tired property manager. To Seraph Landing, HOA subject, authorization for co-owners. Please add Linda and Robert Foster to the permanent access list. As per the attached deed, they are 50% owners of the property. Please issue them master passes and remove the guest restrictions. It was signed Dr. Mars, Brooklyn Foster. This is identity theft, I said. Pure and simple. She impersonated me to a governing body. I looked at the stack of evidence, the fake deed, the blocked loan application, the credit card theft for the televisions and the wedding tent, the fake email, the testimony from Renee. I had enough to put them in prison for 10 years. I felt a tug on my sleeve. I turned around. Eli was standing there. He had his backpack slung over one shoulder. He had just come back from his coding camp carpool. He looked at the papers on the table. He looked at Renee's pale face. He looked at me. "Is it because of me?" he asked. The room went silent. "What do you mean?" Bud Jordan asked, his voice cracking slightly. "The fight," Eli said. "Bryn said I was the problem. On Facebook, she said I was a troubled child. Is that why the police are going to come, because I caused trouble?" My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Even now, after everything, he assumed the burden was his. He assumed that because he existed, he was the cause of the chaos. I stood up and knelt down in front of him. I took his hands in mine. They were cold. "Eli, look at me," I said. He looked at me, his dark eyes searching for the truth. "This has nothing to do with you," I said firmly. "Not one thing. You are not a problem. You are perfect. Do you want to know why there is a fight?" He nodded. "Because there are rules," I said, "in this house and in the world. And some people think that because they are family, the rules don't apply to them. They tried to take things that didn't belong to them. They tried to break the rules of the house. And when people break the rules, there are consequences. So you aren't mad at me. I could never be mad at you for existing," I said. "I am mad at them for behaving badly, and now I am going to make sure they can't do it again. Okay." "Okay," he whispered. "Go play," I said. "Jordan got the new Zelda game. It's on the coffee table." His eyes lit up. He turned and ran into the living room. I stood up and turned back to the table. The sorrow was gone. The guilt was gone. All that was left was the cold, hard resolve of a surgeon holding a scalpel. "Jordan," I said, "scan everything, the email, the deed, the statement, the credit report." "What are we doing?" Renee asked. "We are making a master file," I said. "I want digital copies and physical copies, 3 sets, one for us, one for the lawyer, and one for the sheriff." "You are going to the police?" Renee asked. "I have to," I said. "They tried to mortgage my house. If I don't report it, the bank might think I was complicit. I have to report the fraud to clear the title." I called Marcus Thorne back. "Mr. Thorne," I said, "I have the file." "Good," he said. "I assume you found more." "I found everything," I said. "Identity theft, credit card fraud, premeditation, a fake wedding charged to my account." "A wedding?" Thorne actually laughed, a dry barking sound. "That is a nice touch. Juries hate entitlement. What is the next step?" "We file for an emergency temporary restraining order," Thorne said. "Based on the harassment, the fraud, and the attempt to access the property, and we file a police report for forgery and uttering a false instrument. Once the report is filed, we send a copy to the title company and the county clerk to kill that deed before it gets recorded." "Do it," I said. "This is the point of no return." "Dr. Foster," Thorne warned, "once I file these, your parents will be contacted by law enforcement. They will be questioned. They might be arrested." I looked at the drawing on the fridge. I looked at the real cousin's screenshot. I looked at the invoice for the wedding tent they expected me to pay for while my son slept in a motel. "They made their choice," I said. "Now I am making mine." "I will have the papers ready for you to sign in the morning," Thorne said. I hung up. I looked at Jordan and Renee. "It is done," I said. "We are going to war." Jordan reached out and took my hand. "We are right behind you." I sat down at the table and opened a fresh notebook. At the top of the page, I wrote, "Timeline of events," and then I began to write. I wrote down every loan, every insult, every crossed boundary. I was no longer a daughter trying to please her parents. I was a witness for the prosecution. The location I chose for the confrontation was strategic. The Roasted Bean was the busiest coffee shop in the downtown district, 3 blocks from Marcus Thorne's office. It was loud, crowded with professionals on their lunch breaks, and lined with floor-to-ceiling windows. There were no dark corners. There was no privacy. If my father decided to scream, or if Bryn decided to throw a latte, there would be 50 witnesses and a dozen smartphones recording within seconds. I arrived 15 minutes early. I ordered a black tea I had no intention of drinking and secured a round table in the center of the room. I sat with my back to the wall, facing the door. At 12 o'clock sharp, they walked in. They looked like a group of people who had spent 3 nights in a budget motel. My mother's hair was flatter than usual, lacking its signature hairspray helmet. My father walked with a stiffness that spoke of bad mattresses. Drew looked hungover, his eyes hidden behind sunglasses. And then there was Bryn. She walked in with a binder tucked under her arm, wearing a crisp blazer over her wrinkled t-shirt, trying desperately to project an image of authority. She scanned the room, saw me, and marched over, her heels clicking aggressively on the concrete floor. They pulled out chairs and sat down. No one said hello. The air around the table was thick enough to choke on. "Well," Bryn said, placing her binder on the table with a sharp thwack, "I am glad you finally agreed to be reasonable. Brooklyn, this whole weekend has been a circus." "It certainly has," I said. My voice was low, steady, and devoid of warmth. "Your mother has been crying for 3 days," my father growled. He kept his voice down, but the table vibrated with his tension. "I hope you are proud of yourself. You humiliated us. You left us sleeping in a motel like refugees while you sat in that mansion." "It is a 3-bedroom house, Dad," I corrected. "Not a mansion, and you weren't refugees. You were trespassers who got caught." "Blood is blood," my mother hissed, tears already welling up in her eyes. It was her favorite opening move. "We are family. You don't treat family like criminals. You don't lock the gate on your own flesh and blood." "You do when your flesh and blood tries to rob you," I said. "Rob you?" Bryn scoffed, opening her binder. She pulled out a notepad and a pen, acting the part of the mediator. "Let's not be dramatic. We are here to discuss a usage schedule. We need to clear up this misunderstanding about the ownership so we can get the reunion back on track. The group is still waiting. We can salvage the last 2 days if you just unlock the gate now." The delusion was breathtaking. She actually thought this was a negotiation. She thought she could bully me back into submission with a clipboard and a stern tone. "There is no reunion," I said, "and there is no usage schedule." I reached into my tote bag. I didn't pull out a binder. I pulled out a thick manila envelope. "I didn't come here to negotiate. Bryn, I came here to show you why you are never setting foot on my property again." I opened the envelope and began to lay the documents out on the table, one by one, like tarot cards of their destruction. First, the screenshot. "Item 1, I said, sliding the paper toward my mother. "The Facebook thread. Overnights are for the real cousins." My mother flinched as if the paper were hot. "That was just a joke. Brooklyn, you are so sensitive." "It wasn't a joke," I said. "It was the reason I locked the gate. But honestly, I should thank you for it. If you hadn't insulted my son publicly, I might have let you in. And if I had let you in, I wouldn't have found the rest of this." I slid the second paper across. The credit card statement with the highlighted charges. "Item 2, I continued. $440 for televisions, $1,200 to Party Perfect Rentals for a 60-foot tent and a dance floor." Bryn went still. Her eyes flicked to the paper, then back to me. "That was for the family," she stammered. "We needed a tent for the dinner. It was for a wedding," I said. "A vow renewal. You told the rental company it was the Kincaid wedding. You were throwing yourself a reception on my lawn, paid for with my money, while my son was supposed to sleep in a Motel 6. I was going to pay you back," Bryn snapped, her face flushing red. "I just needed to put the deposit down. You have plenty of money. You wouldn't even miss it." "That is theft. Bryn," I said. But that is small potatoes compared to this. I reached into the envelope and pulled out the final document, the photocopy of the quitclaim deed. I placed it in the center of the table. The reaction was instantaneous. My father stopped breathing. My mother put a hand over her mouth. Drew, who had been staring at his phone, looked up, saw the document, and physically recoiled, pressing his back against his chair. Bryn stared at it. She didn't look surprised. She looked caught. January 15th, I said, pointing to the date. I was in surgery, yet somehow, my signature appears on this document, transferring 50% of my $700,000 asset to Mom and Dad. Notarized by a woman in Shelby County who actually lives in Pine Hollow. Silence, the kind of silence that screams. You forged my signature, I said. You committed a felony. You filed a false instrument with the county clerk, and then you tried to use this fake deed to take out a $150,000 line of credit against my equity. We did it for you, Bryn blurted out. The sentence hung in the air, absurd and desperate. Excuse me, I asked. We did it to protect the asset, she hissed, leaning forward. You are unstable, Brooklyn. You are always working. You are stressed. You married a man who doesn't understand our family values. We were afraid you were going to sell the house or lose it. We just wanted to make sure the family legacy was secure. It was just a formality. A formality. I laughed. A sharp, cold sound. You tried to mortgage it. Bryn, how does draining the equity protect the asset? We needed liquid capital, my father interrupted, slamming his hand on the table. People at nearby tables turned to look, but he didn't care. The business is struggling. Your mother has medical bills. We were going to pay it back. We just needed a bridge loan, and the bank wouldn't look at us without collateral. You have so much, and you give us crumbs. We had to take what was owed to us. Owed to you. I stood up. I couldn't sit anymore. Nothing is owed to you. I paid your debts. I bought your cars. I fixed your roof, and you tried to steal my house. It is not stealing if it stays in the family. Mom sobbed. Why are you being so cruel? We were going to tell you once the loan was approved. That is literally the definition of fraud. Mom, I said. I looked at Drew. He hadn't said a word. He was pale, sweating under his sunglasses. And you, I said to him, you were part of this. You knew. I didn't sign it, Drew said quickly. His voice was high, panicked. Shut up. Drew, Bryn snapped. No, I won't shut up. Drew took off his sunglasses. His eyes were wide with fear. You said it was legal. You said Brooklyn agreed to it verbally and we just needed to handle the paperwork. You didn't tell me you were tracing her signature. You coward, Bryn spat. You were right there when we printed it. But I didn't sign it. Drew looked at me, pleading. Brooklyn, listen to me. She asked me to witness it. She wanted me to be the second witness on the notary block. I said no. I told her I wasn't going to jail for a piece of paper. That is why the notary stamp is fake. She bought it online because I wouldn't get my friend to do it. You traitor, Bryn screamed. She lunged across the table, grabbing Drew's arm. Stop it, I said, my voice cutting through the noise like a whip. They froze. So, I said, looking at Bryn, you orchestrated it. You forged the signature. You bought the fake stamp. You filed the paperwork. And you dragged Mom and Dad into a felony because you needed money. I needed the deposit, Bryn shouted, tears finally spilling over tears of rage, not sorrow. I took money from the church group. I took $5,000 in deposits for a retreat next month. I spent it. Okay, I spent it on the credit cards. If they don't get into that house, I have to pay them back, and I don't have it. They are going to press charges. The truth finally sat on the table, naked and ugly. It wasn't about family. It wasn't about love. It wasn't even about a reunion. Bryn had sold access to my house to strangers to cover her own debts. She had promised them a luxury retreat she didn't own. The reunion was just a cover operation to establish possession, to get the keys, to get the deed recorded so she could legally host her paying customers. I looked at my parents. My father looked deflated. realizing his business loan excuse had just been exposed as a lie to cover Bryn's embezzlement. My mother was weeping into a napkin, unable to look at me. "You didn't plan a reunion," I said, gathering my papers back into the envelope. "You planned a hostile takeover. You planned leverage." "Brooklyn, please," my mother whimpered. "We can fix this. We can pay the church group back. Just don't call the police. Think of your sister's children. If she gets in trouble." "She should have thought of her children before she committed forgery," I said. "And she should have thought of my child before she called him a side character." I zipped up my bag. "I have already filed the police report," I said. Bryn gasped. "You are lying. You wouldn't—" "I filed it this morning," I said. "My lawyer, Marcus Thorne, has filed a temporary restraining order against all of you. He has also sent a packet to the district attorney regarding the deed. The title company has been notified. The credit bureaus have been notified." "You are bluffing," my father said, his face turning purple. "You are just trying to scare us. You won't send your own mother to jail." "I am not sending her to jail," I said. "She sent herself to jail when she signed that paper. I am just handing over the evidence." I looked at them one last time. They looked small. They looked pathetic. They were not the giants who had controlled my life for 30 years. They were just grifters who had picked the wrong mark. "Do not contact me," I said. "Do not come to my house. Do not call my husband. Do not text my son. If you want to speak to me, you call Marcus Thorne. His card is on the table." I dropped the business card on top of the fake deed. "Brooklyn, wait." Bryn stood up, reaching for me. I stepped back, out of her reach. "Goodbye," I said. I turned and walked out of the coffee shop. I could feel their eyes on my back. I could feel the heat of their panic. I walked out into the bright, midday sun. The air smelled of exhaust and ocean salt. I took a deep breath. My hands were not shaking. My heart was not racing. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. There was a text from Jordan. "Eli wants to know if we can build a fort in the living room tonight." I typed back, "Tell him yes. Tell him we can build anything he wants." I put the phone away and walked toward my lawyer's office to finish the job. They thought I was bluffing. They thought the old Brooklyn, the doormat Brooklyn, would turn the car around and come back to fix their mess. They were about to find out that she didn't exist anymore. The fluorescent lights of the county courthouse were buzzing with a sound that reminded me of a failing hard drive. It was Thursday, 3 days after the confrontation at the coffee shop. We were sitting in a small hearing room, not a grand courtroom, but the stakes felt higher than any capital case. I sat on the right side of the heavy oak table. Jordan was next to me, his hand resting on my knee, his grip firm and grounding. Marcus Thorne sat on my other side, arranging his files with the precision of a man who knows he is holding a royal flush. Across from us sat my family. They looked diminished. My father was slumped in his chair, wearing a suit that looked 2 sizes too big for him now. My mother was clutching a tissue, her eyes red-rimmed and darting around the room as if looking for an exit. Bryn was sitting ramrod straight, her jaw set in a line of defiance, but I could see the tremor in her hands. Drew wasn't there. He had wisely decided to stay in Pine Hollow, likely hoping that distance would equate to immunity. We were there for the hearing regarding the temporary restraining order and the emergency injunction to block the recording of the fraudulent deed. The magistrate, a woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen every version of human dishonesty, looked over her glasses at the defense table. "I have reviewed the petition," she said, her voice dry. "The plaintiff alleges forgery, identity theft, and harassment. This is a civil hearing for the protection order, but I understand there is a criminal investigation pending." "Yes, Your Honor," Marcus Thorne said, standing up. "Detectives from the Fraud Division took Dr. Foster's statement on Tuesday. We have submitted the police report number for the record." My father's lawyer, a local generalist who looked overwhelmed by Thorne's aggressive paperwork, stood up. "Your Honor, this is a family dispute that has spiraled out of control. My clients admit that there were irregularities with the paperwork, But it was done with the understanding that this was a family asset. There was no malicious intent. Dr. Foster is reacting emotionally to a disagreement about a vacation. Irregularities. Thorne's voice cut through the air like a whip. Your Honor, they traced my client's signature from a decade-old student loan document. They purchased a counterfeit notary stamp online. They created a spoofed email address to impersonate a surgeon to her homeowners association. That is not an irregularity. That is a sophisticated, premeditated scheme to defraud Dr. Foster of property valued at over $700,000. Thorne walked to the bench and handed over the exhibits. Exhibit A, he said, the sworn affidavit from the real notary in Shelby County, stating she has never met these people and her stamp was stolen. Exhibit B, the hospital logs showing Dr. Foster was performing open-heart surgery at the exact moment she allegedly signed this deed. Exhibit C, the blocked loan application where the respondents attempted to extract $150,000 in equity using the forged title. I watched my mother as Thorne spoke. She shrank with every sentence. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the table, realizing that the narrative she had built, the story where she was the martyr and I was the ungrateful daughter, was crumbling under the weight of cold, hard facts. The magistrate flipped through the pages. She paused at the loan application. You tried to mortgage a house you didn't own, she asked, looking directly at my father. It was a bridge loan, my father croaked. For the business. It was fraud, the magistrate corrected. Then, Bryn stood up. Her lawyer tried to grab her arm, but she shook him off. She couldn't help herself. She had to control the narrative. She is doing this out of spite, Bryn shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. She doesn't care about the house. She has plenty of money. She's doing this because we didn't want her son at the reunion. That is what this is about. She is trying to destroy her own family because she is obsessed with that boy. The room went dead silent. That boy, Bryn continued, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch, has ruined everything. We were a happy family until she brought him in, and now she is dragging her parents through court just to prove a point to a kid who isn't even hers. Jordan stiffened beside me. I put a hand on his arm to stop him from rising. I stood up slowly. I didn't shout. I didn't point. I looked at my sister, and I felt nothing but a profound, exhausting pity. You are right about one thing. Bryn, I said. It is about him. See, she sneered. She admits it. But not in the way you think, I continued. I didn't file these papers because I am vindictive. I filed them because you are dangerous. You think you are entitled to my money, my home, and my peace. You think the rules don't apply to you because we share DNA. I took a breath. You said I changed because of him, I said, my voice steady. No, I didn't change because of him. I changed because you finally showed me who you are. He just gave me the courage to believe you. Bryn opened her mouth to argue, but the magistrate slammed her gavel. Sit down, Ms. Kincaid, the magistrate ordered, or I will have you removed. Bryn collapsed into her chair. The magistrate looked at the papers for one more moment, then looked up. I am granting the permanent restraining order for a period of 5 years, she ruled. The respondents are barred from contacting the plaintiff or her immediate family, including her husband and son, by any means. They are barred from coming within 500 feet of the plaintiff's residence, workplace, or the property in Cape Seraph. She signed the order with a flourish. Furthermore, I am issuing a judicial declaration that the quitclaim deed dated January 15th is void ab initio due to fraud. The county clerk will be instructed to strike it from the record immediately. She looked at my parents. You are lucky Dr. Foster has not pressed for your immediate arrest in this courtroom today, she said. But the criminal investigation will proceed. I suggest you get better counsel. Adjourned. We walked out of the hearing room. My parents didn't look at me. They were huddled with their lawyer, who was frantically whispering to them about potential prison time for the loan fraud. In the hallway, I stopped. Karen from the title company was waiting for us. She had come to testify if needed. She looked at me with wide eyes. "You got the order?" she asked. "We got it," I said. "The deed is dead." Karen let out a long breath. "Thank God." "Brooklyn, I didn't want to scare you before, but I need you to know how close this was." "What do you mean?" "If you hadn't caught this when you did," she said, lowering her voice. "If that deed had been fully recorded and the flagging period had ended, Bryn would have created a cloud on title. Even if you proved it was a forgery later, it would have taken years to untangle. You wouldn't have been able to sell. You wouldn't have been able to refinance. And since they filed it as joint tenants, if anything had happened to you, they would have automatically inherited your half. They would have owned the whole thing." A chill went down my spine. It wasn't just about a weekend party. If I had died in a car accident or on the operating table, they would have kicked Jordan and Eli out. They would have taken the house. They had set it up so they would win if I stopped breathing. "It is over now," Jordan said, wrapping his arm around my shoulders. "They can't touch us." "No," I said. They can't." We walked out of the courthouse and into the parking lot. The sun was shining. The air tasted sweet. I expected to feel triumphant. I expected to feel the surge of victory that comes when you win a difficult case. But I didn't feel that. I felt the way I feel when I remove a tumor. I don't hate the tumor. I don't scream at it. I just cut it out, drop it in the biohazard bin, and sew the patient back up so they can heal. My family was a malignancy I had carried for 39 years, and I was finally in remission. That evening, the house was quiet in the good way, the kind of quiet that feels like a warm blanket. We were in the kitchen. I was making dinner tacos, because that was Eli's favorite. Jordan was grading papers at the table. Eli ran in from the living room. He was holding a piece of paper. "Mom, look." He handed me a new drawing. It was the beach house again, but this time, he had added details. He had drawn the hammock. He had drawn the three of us on the porch, and he had drawn a big, thick fence around the whole property. At the bottom, he had written, "Safe Zone." I felt tears prick my eyes, but they didn't fall. I smiled. "This is perfect," I said. "This goes on the fridge, front and center." I took down the old grocery list and used 2 magnets to secure the drawing. It sat there. A manifesto of our new life, a life where he was the main character, a life where he was safe. My phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at it. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. The area code was from Pine Hollow. Family meeting round 2. "We can fix this if you just listen." It was probably Drew, using a burner phone, or maybe a cousin I hadn't blocked yet. I didn't open it. I didn't wonder what they had to say. I didn't feel the old pull of obligation. I pressed delete. Then I pressed block. I looked at Eli. He was helping Jordan set the table, laughing as he tried to balance 3 cups at once. They could plan whatever they wanted. They could plan their victim narratives. They could plan their defense for the fraud trial. They could plan their next grift, but they weren't going to do it with my home, and they certainly weren't going to do it with our peace. I turned off the lights in the kitchen, leaving only the glow of the refrigerator light illuminating the drawing of the 3 of us, standing together, impenetrable. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I poured a lot of emotion into Brooklyn's journey, and I really hope it resonated with you. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening on your commute, at the gym, or maybe relaxing at home? Drop a comment below and let me know. And while you are there, please share your thoughts on Brooklyn's decision. Did she go too far? Or was it exactly what they deserved? If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories. Hit that like button and smash the hype button to help this video get recommended to more people who need a little justice in their lives. Your support means the world to me. See you in the next story.